This is part 2 with Street Called Straight, Scott Frankfurt. Here's Apple of My Eye from the album Heartsong.
Soaring high above, you rescue me, oh my redeemer. You spread your wings, and you caught me up and said, don't be afraid of anything. He that touches you touches the apple of my eye. He that touches you
And you're down there as producer of this project. Who did you have helping you? I mean, was this like, you're just handling this, right?
I had no idea how much production would be a part of my life back then. I started out wanting to be a studio musician. I wanted to be a drummer. I got through college playing the drums. And that's why I think I took to the drum machine, because there really were two camps. Drummers that said, anathema, you know, this is terrible, don't do the drum machine. And then drummers that said, yeah, let's do this, to the point where I actually appeared at the local 47 to a room full of drummers trying to show them an Oberheim DMX and say, don't be scared. You can do this better than the keyboard guys. You guys should embrace this. And it was not met 100% with, love. But so the synth experience was definitely a love of mine. I loved song, and I was starting to pay attention to like who my favorite drummers were and who the producers were that were doing it. And there is no school you go to become a producer in that sense. we use that term today to describe someone who kind of spearheads a song with a drum machine and a lyric, and that's a producer. But that's not what it classically is. Classically, a producer is in charge of the record. And I just loved, even in the early days of playing drums in bands, I just always had an arranger's head, and I wanted my parts to lock with the bass. I wanted my parts to lock with the guitar. And I was thinking about more like an orchestrator than a drummer. And thankful, to my teachers that helped me to think that way. So good producers always use the best musicians they can find. And that was a lesson that was learned, I think, early enough for me to take advantage of, even on this first record. And I had some nice relationships with, like I said, because of the calling card from Ensoniq Corp. I met a lot of the best musicians, and so I had opportunity to invite them to be part of the project.
Oh, let's hear
So
who was on
yeah, so
there.
like on the second record, we have Rose Stone from Sly and the Family Stone singing on background vocals. We have Edgar Winter on one of our records is doing an organ solo.
And he's now with Toto, did you say?
Oh no, that's Warren Ham, who's another good
oops.
friend of mine. On our last record, there's the title cut, "Saints in the Light." It has a vocal duet with Warren Ham, who's been a good friend of mine since the early days. And he's a formidable musician. He started out in Kansas, actually, the band Kansas, was in Toto for a time, spent years with Donna Summer and others, and then now is back in Toto. They're on tour right now, and he's also in Ringo Starr's band. And we were Bible study buds for the longest time, and he's a wonderful man of God, and love his family. And actually, I produced some stuff with his daughter, Rachel Talbot. She's a very strong artist, and so those guys added so much to the production. And again, it was just really, it really was a blessing to be able to just have those phone numbers and talk to those people and interact with them. And there were some key men in my life that were legit experienced producers, men like Jeremy Lubbock, who produced some great stuff for Barbra Streisand, Mervyn Warren, wonderful, from Take Six. And Dennis Lambert is another man who Dennis Lambert wrote Ain't No Woman Like the One I Got. So, and dozens of hit songs. And so Dennis, I modeled this studio that we're sitting in right now after his studio in Encino. And I learned so much from him. I met Christopher Cross through him. And so my productions with Christopher and others largely are standing on the shoulders of guys like that who were generous. Peter Wolf comes to mind. Peter had monster hits in the 80s and 90s. We Built This City, and all of those types of songs. So those guys were very generous. Peter, in fact, got me on the first Pointer Sisters record, and it was like, here's a synclavier, good luck. It was like, all right, I don't know exactly what to do, but where's the kick drum, And Peter was very generous, though. He gave me a break and a shot. So did Jason Sheff, I mentioned, from Chicago. We're working again more and more these days, but back then we were working a little bit together too. I learned so many production things from those guys. So there's one humorous story about Jesus Saves. On the album, it's called To Save You. And it's a straight up, gospel song influenced heavily by, the people that Jode loved. And she loved a lot of vintage, Shirley Caesar and all those great gospel singers that were doing the real stuff. Anyway, we were producing the record, and we thought, hey, let's do this little, vignette thing like, all the big pop records were doing. You'll hear footsteps. You hear somebody walking down the street. And we'll do the Foley, we'll I remember her walking on this little stone step, trying to get the footsteps and shuffling along. And you hear in the distance, like this gospel revival, black gospel thing happening in the distance. And you're kind of intrigued, and you're walking towards it, and it's getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And you're getting closer, and all of a sudden the doors bash open. And you're hearing, following Jesus, right? And so we were so proud of this intro. And we thought, this is the coolest thing ever. And then it goes into a halftime version. So we're here, and then it ends up, So we were very proud of this. And we needed background singers. So I call my friend Howard McCrary. Howard is, look him up. He's a crazy notable arranger and incredible musician. Maybe one of the best gospel organists I've ever heard in my life. But anyway, all that to say, we invited him over, and we're talking about background vocals because he's going to arrange and bring everything together. And he walks in, and we're so proud of this intro, and I'm like winking at Jody, she's winking at me, and we play this thing, and he's just standing there holding his chin like this, and we're playing, you hear the footsteps, you know, and then you hear the doors were open, and we're just playing. We played for him, play the intro, he gets to the end of the song, he's smiling so big, and we're going, what'd you think of that intro? That intro was really cool. He goes, yeah, I wrote that song. And we're like, you wrote that song for Shirley Caesar? Yeah, I played on it too. And we were just like, okay, we know nothing. We're complete crazy people. But anyway, I always loved the song. I always thought it has a great message and is put together in a nice way. So yeah, number 6 from the second album, Heartsong, To Save You.
I could feel my heart was too. So my yearnings were rising with the moonlight. Oh, I heard a voice like a cool breeze blowing gently through the night, singing Jesus save, Jesus save. He saved me from your loneliness. Oh, he knows. Let him give you freedom's rest. He won't make a slave of you, but turn away from you. He just wants to save you. Just wants to save you. I thought my life was over. My friends had given up on me. Oh, I took my hope and I followed the sweet singing that was calling me. Found smiling faces, shining with holy light. This life lit me so like a candle burning through the
All the music you hear on Frontline Rewind episodes is available on iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, and our own website, frontlinerecords.us.
The number one person that was on that team and still is to this day is Doug Ryder, who, remember Boston? Mm-hmm. More than a feeling. Okay, so he's listed as one of the engineers on that record, and I was fortunate enough to meet him in our early songwriting days, and invited him to help me engineer that first record. And we've been, brothers separated at birth ever since. And he was the best man at Sharon and my wedding. And I have to say, everything that's transpired since then, all of those relationships, everything that we're able to do now, I have to shout out to my beautiful bride Sharon, because she's unique in the universe. We married in 2008, and had I was when I lost Jode in 2006, I despaired for life. I'm not going to lie about it. I definitely was. I remember one Christmas, December. She died in September, and that Christmas I was standing over Diablo Dam up there in the Northwest, and I was with my pastor friend and all of that, but I was looking down at that crevice thinking, what I'm feeling in my chest right now, it'd be a lot easier to just like kind of take one step right off of this thing and end up in the snow. That's really how I felt, and it was quite frankly, it was sinful, but that was the emotional state I was in. And cut to 2008, and I'm literally on eHarmony trying to figure out how am I ever going to do this again, but I cannot be single. I had a wonderful marriage to a vibrant life, and 18 years of ministry, over at Grace with Joe, that was really fulfilling and all of those things. And I just didn't, quite frankly, and I'm just a guy, so I didn't know how to function. And so I'm figuring, well, if I do this eHarmony thing, it'll be safe, and maybe I'll luck out, and maybe a year from now I could address this topic. And so ironically, and I know this is kind of off topic, but ironically, the only reason I met this precious person is because on my profile I put a picture of the two of us, because I felt I needed to be upfront about the widower situation. And she's in Arizona, and she's clicking through guys in LA and just deleting them. And she stops and goes, now what kind of bozo dude has his ex-wife on his profile page? And thank God, she stopped and said, oh, she's really pretty. Oh, she's died. Okay. So she paused just long enough to make that initial contact. And then, of course, I came to know this generous Christian woman who we fell in love, and she completely understood and didn't make it was as natural as we're sitting here that she was able to accommodate in her heart not just me, but me and my past and my history, and everything that had gone on there. And so that, and the fact that on her profile it said she was cute as a bug and said last book I read, Postmodernism by Bobby Brewer or whatever, and I said, okay, that's a cool book. I want to meet this beautiful blonde hairdresser from Arizona who reads about postmodernism. This is someone I want to hang with. So, anyway, but I say all that to say that we probably wouldn't be having this discussion in this studio today, or I wouldn't have had much of a life or a career ongoing if it wasn't just for the size of her heart and everything that she brings to our current business, the recording studio out here. So
very happy for both of you.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been blessed more than most people, with two amazing partners in my life. So that's an important part, I guess, of my personal story. But as it relates to Street Called Straight, I definitely feel like God's been in charge from day one, taking us on a path, and music's always been a common thread, but even though I thought music was everything, he's everything, and we're getting shaped into the image of Christ, and that's what all of it ultimately is really about. Yes. And so, when it came to music making, we always felt that it wasn't about nailing the formula, even though we knew the formula backwards and forwards. It's how we got our publishing deal. We knew the formula, but we just wanted to be creative and do interesting things. And you see that in a lot of the songs where all of a sudden, like if you listen to on the second album on Heartsong, there's a song there that's nice duet with Philip Bailey. That song, it's called Pick Up the Pieces. That song and Apple of My Eye, both of those really had an energy to them. Apple of My Eye was kind of the up-tempo pop single. But Pick Up the Pieces was one of those just random encounters, you know, the art of the encounter, and I just happened through that sound design period run into Earth, Wind & Fire, as I mentioned, and so that turned into a conversation with Philip, and the LA riots had just happened, and there was a lot of strange emotions going on in the city, and a lot of musicians, a lot of songwriters were thinking, how do we express this? So Jody wrote a song. Philip graciously accepted to do the duet, and it's really fun to hear them singing together.
Well, let's hear it right now. Let's Pick Up the Pieces from the second Street Called Straight album, Heartsong.
Fighting for this pain and suffering never won the war. It's time for healing and mending. We got to be strong and try to get along. We got to pick up the pieces hand in hand. I know. From deep within, you've got to pray for love, 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 and understanding. We've got to be strong. We've got to try and get along. We've got to pick up the pieces, hand in hand. I know we can together if we pick up the pieces. It's got to start with love in each and every heart. Open our eyes, Lord, help us see. The battle is won when we fall to our knees. Fall to our knees and let you pick up the pieces with your hand in our hands. I know we can together when we pick up the pieces. It's got to start with love and understanding. It's got to start. The Father. Oh, it's got to start with love in each and every heart. Pick up the pieces with your hand in our hands. I know we can together when we pick up the pieces. It's got to start with His love in each and every heart. Are we fighting for? It's time for healing. Time for mending. Now we can do it. It's got to start. Hey, with love in each and every heart. Pick up the pieces.
frontlinerecords.us, we have all kinds of goodies. Artist bios, links to all the music, and a free music offering when you sign up for the newsletter. Check it out, frontlinerecords.us. That was Pick Up the Pieces. We had a feature artist, Philip Bailey, famous for his group
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Thank you.
Yes.
I want to say, Richard Souther shows up on a song, Heartsong, right?
Yes.
Tell us about Richard and your relationship with him and how he ended up on that song.
Absolutely. Richard Souther is a formidable artist, beloved by many. He brought me in on the Twyla Paris Sanctuary album. He's a phenomenally gifted musician and producer with an amazing story himself. And he's known for many different eras of music and things like that. And I got to collaborate with him on a few albums that he was signed to Sony at the time after his very successful new age music genre run, and after the Twyla Paris years and all the things that he did, he toured with I want to say Anne Herring and others that were mainstays in the Christian music scene back in the day, as well as all the modern stuff he was doing. One album was called Vision. And it was the music of Hildegard von Bingen, and it was a smash record out of New York, kind of an instrumental and almost chant-like, but with his special brand of instrumentation and whatnot. And anyway, so we were kind of attached to the hip for a while, and we're still very good friends, and I love Richard. But he was someone that I thought, what would happen if this very touching tribute to Jody's mom met the musical sensibilities of Richard Souther, and he accepted, and he did the arrangement for Heartsong. And that was, again, we didn't have like orchestra budget. So Richard brought, an orchestration that, even though it was synth based, it was just lovely and could be, instantly scored for orchestra, that type of thing. So that's a touching song. So so Richard, and then there's another friend who was instrumental throughout these first couple of records, great guitarist, because I don't play guitar at all. I can play piano, I can certainly play drums, but and synths and stuff, but I always depended on great guitarists. And one of my dear friends, Basil Fung, he was in Janet Jackson's band for a while, and just like I say, a formidable force in the guitar world, and he's still doing great stuff. He guested on a fun song that shows a side of Street Called Straight that was a little campy, a little humorous. It's called Can't Keep Me Away. It's our ode to marital bliss, and back in our 90s marital bliss, and so I think that'd be kind of fun to hear Basil on that song. He does a really nice job on that, and there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek cuteness. Our nieces and nephews love this song. Okay, here's our ode to marital bliss, Can't Keep Me Away by Street Called Straight.
To say I much longer. Right here and now. I take my vow. If I can't walk, I'll take a car. If I can't drive, I'll take a plane. There's no orange. You know you can't keep me away from you. Set a ship I stole away. Tie me up or break away night or day. You know you can't keep me. Can't keep me away from you. Can't keep me away from you. From you. Take a car if I can't drive. I'll take a plane and snow rain. You know you can't keep me away from you. Sail a ship I stole away. Tie me up or break away night or day. You can't keep me away. I'll dive, fly. Honey, you know what you mean to me. It don't take no scientist to see. You can't keep me away from you. I ski, I surf, I slip and slide down the grass. I'll skydive.
Wait a minute. There's a limit to everything. I won't skydive. However, I would take one of those swamp craft. You know those things in the Florida Everglades? With the fan on the back.
There's something about a swamp craft in there.
Yeah.
And that always got our nieces and nephews. And anywhere we played that song, everyone said, do the swamp craft song, because there's kind of some cute angles in there. We used to have a lot of fun. Jody had a crazy sense of humor, really, really ironic and fun.
Yeah.
Shows
you
up
can
in some of the
tell.
tunes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love the bungee jumping
Exactly.
part in this song.
Exactly. Everyone identifies with some sport mentioned in that song.
Yes.
But we were definitely, our roots were in a Sunday school called Marriage Builders. So we took, building the marriage very seriously.
Yes. So in addition to, obviously you had a big role at Grace Church right here in LA, in the Valley. How else did people find you, find your music back in the day?
After the first two albums on Frontline, we released two more independently on our own label called Bleach Bros Music Group. The third one, which was called Well in the Wilderness. And there's some very, very interesting transitional material on there. And then kind of the single on that one was Heaven is a Place. And that's a very fun song talking about, our hearts reflecting what we were learning about heaven. And particularly Jody, she was so heavenly minded, and the future was always in view with her. It was looking back on it. It's full, a lot of pathos for me and a lot of reflection there. But there's no question that she looked forward. She was one of those that looked forward to heaven more than just about anyone I've ever met. And I've known people like this. But there was just no question. And I think, as I said earlier, her music and her lyrics tended to be a little on the melancholy, heavier side. I mean, with the exception of the occasional lark that, like we listen to and Can't Keep Me Away. But most of these songs they're right out of her Bible study. They're sometimes right out of Scripture. And but there's always a poetic nature to them. But she had a way, I don't know, like I say, a melancholy, a sadness that I just loved. I was ministered to by this stuff. I couldn't wait when she would say, honey, I've got something for you to hear. And it would be like, okay, this is going to be a good day, and go and listen to the new song. And I felt the same way when she'd come in and hear what I'd tried to do to it. And most of the time she appreciated what I was doing in the same way. So we always got along that way. The hardest part, of course, is doing vocals with your wife. That's the hardest part, because the same person that's sorting your socks is being told, hey, you can do better, do it again. And she's like, yeah, well, why don't you sort your own socks better? And then maybe we'll have a conversation,
Yeah.
So you need those extra skills, I guess, if you're going to do music with your spouse. But that's something that I feel like on that record we started to capture, and you start to see more choir, more worship songs coming out. And that was happening because we were steeped very deeply in the ministry at Grace Church. I think we were doing about 3 sets a week. We were doing a Wednesday night service, a Sunday morning service, and probably a Bible study or something during the week. We were deeply, deeply involved and loving it and growing and being challenged. So we were definitely, that's what was in our heads. So much of Jode's journaling and her devotions, then all of a sudden a song pops out, and that's a very typical motif for Christian songwriters, no doubt about it. But I almost hesitate to say Christian songwriter because she didn't think of herself that way. We were just two married people who love the Lord, and we're still doing music, and this stuff is coming out. And of course we're going to do a record because that's what we do. We didn't know not how to make a record. We wouldn't know what to do.
Sure.
And so that was a precious time.
The name of that album again for listeners?
Well in the Wilderness. And then after that, in the year 2004, roughly, I think, our last record that we did together had some just wonderful, wonderful moments. One of my influences that I mentioned, Jeremy Lubbock, he had brought me in on Barbra Streisand gigs and the Whitney Houston gigs and such, and he was one of the foremost string arrangers of our day. He's now retired. He's in South Africa now, but he was wonderful and did the string arrangement for Doxology, which is it's a sweeping theological ballad, but it's one of those things that has a beautiful orchestration. There's a song here that has, we decided to leave the drum machine more and more over those last 2 records. And so drummers like Vinnie Colaiuta is playing drums on this album, and Abraham Laboriel Sr. is playing bass. Edgar Winter is playing organ on a song or 2. And so when you check out these records and you read the liner notes, you'll see there's just some real fun guest appearances. And I'll be honest, we were doing that for ourselves. We just had so much love for great musicians, and like, okay, so we're doing a double time hora in the middle of our song about, it was like completely, there's some moments there where you go, what is going on? And then it comes back, so, but the point was always to see how we just didn't want to be derivative. I mean, we loved pop music. Pop music is derivative. It's catchy, it's familiar. But there was always this longing, whether it was a melancholy longing or whether it was a God is great, why can't our music be great? Going back to the why does the devil have all the good music? We bought into like, yeah, he shouldn't. How good can we make it? And we brought as much as we could to it in the arranging and in the ideas for the songs. And so a lot of that's reflected on that last record. But I have some, the duet with Warren Ham, Saints in the Light, is probably the one that I think captures the spirit of that Saints in the Light record, the title cut. Because
I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful duet.
So the album is called Saints in the Light, and this is the title song, Saints in the Light. Again, Street Called Straight. You can find it digitally. It wasn't on Frontline, but it is a wonderful album. And here we go, Saints in the Light.
chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, and we declare eternal praises for the gift of ages, Jesus Christ.
We are yours, a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, and we declare eternal praises for the gift of ages, Jesus Christ.
Jesus, our Redeemer, hallelujah. So worthy to receive power, wisdom, honor, glory, and might. For in the song of His love, we are saints in light. Chosen people, royal priesthood, holy nation, we declare eternal praises for the gift of ages, Jesus Christ. Hallelujah.
Be sure to check out Frontline Records' YouTube channel for exclusive live performances recorded right here on our Frontline Rewind shows. I think I want to just, I want to get into what you do now, your studio, the people you work with, that you just have this richness, yes. So as we've heard, Scott, you have connected with so many people in the music industry, recognizable names from the 80s all the way to today. And I'm a big admirer of how you continue to grow and develop your craft of technology and production. And you've got this studio now, Scott Frankfurt Studios, right here in Woodland Hills, California. And you are working with some amazing, notable people. So even starting way back then, some of the names that you've provided for us, I really, go ahead and don't be shy about it. Tell us who you've been just honored to work with, because I know you would see it that way, in right here in your studio and just in as you've continued in this music journey.
I appreciate that, Adele. Thank you. I'm definitely shy about that kind of thing, but I'll be happy to. I'll do my best.
Thank you.
Maybe going from now backwards might be easier for me to keep it. Right now, I've had the joy of, I think we're on our 4th album with Sergio Mendes. Sergio has brought artists, he collaborates at a very high level. So John Legend has been here and done a song. Janelle Monáe came and did a song on the Magic album. Incredible musicians from Brazil that are very noted there. The opportunity to work with Christopher Cross, even to this day, he's still putting out music. He's a great artist. I produced an entire album for him back in the day, but I continue to enjoy doing singles with him. Mervyn Warren and I collaborated just recently on the new Manhattan Transfer record that's about to come out this month, end of this month, I think on the 30th. I mixed that whole album. That was a great privilege. Right before that album, I mixed, there's a very famous bass player from the Weather Report. His name is Alfonso Johnson. He did a solo album called Metaphors. Highly recommended. I also had the privilege of mixing that one. Right. There have been a few films. Joyful Noise had Queen Latifah in it. I did a lot of the drumming on that one.
And Mervyn
produced that. That's right. Mervyn also brought me in on the One Wish album that Whitney Houston did right before her death, our Christmas album. I mean, I've had the opportunity to work with Phoebe Snow back in the day, some wonderful opportunities with artists that are young indies now that are coming up on the scene, like J.P. Sachs, and a lot of Christian ministries, like Enfield is a band that comes to mind. They had a great run of albums, one of which I got to produce for them that was really great. On the worship side of things, Sovereign Grace Music has been doing some great work, and I've had the opportunity to mix some things, master some things for them. So there's incredible musicians that have also been through here. Let's see. We've had the opportunity to work with Verdine White, the bass player of Earth, Wind & Fire, on several projects. And even his wife, Shirley Clark, is a wonderful singer. She has a band. They had, oh my gosh, they had so many hits in the 70s. And so we've been working with them some, and wonderful singers. Shirley Clark, was one of the Ikeettes. So she was in, Ike's band and one of the singers back then. And and then another member of that band was in the Raylettes. So we've got Ikeettes and Raylettes. The Kardashians have been here. It's kind of controversial, but we had 4 out of 5 of the daughters here. And we've had some very interesting voiceover people come through. Ed Asner, some of you might remember Ed, the voicing character of Up and Mary Tyler Moore Show and all that stuff, and he's a character. That was a lot of fun. Jason Sudeikis has come through when we did some of the stuff for Angry Birds. Boyz II Men, I've done some cuts for Boyz II Men. Edgar Winter, And yeah, there's a long list. I'm sure I'm leaving out some of the juicy ones, but I definitely know that we pinch ourselves all the time. We can't believe some of the people that come through here. Some of the top producers of the day, DJ Khalil visited us a couple weeks ago. Kareem Riggins was here yesterday. These are all some of the best, you know, he's working with Common right now. And the musicians that come through they're just scary. I mean, I think of Scott Mayo doing the horn arrangements that he's doing here. And Paul Jackson Jr., one of the foremost guitarists. I mean, the list keeps going on, and I feel kind of silly listing it, but it's one of those things where, like, all my heroes a lot of them have been here. Abe Laboriel Jr., the drummer in Paul McCartney's band, he's a friend, sang at our wedding. How does that happen? You know, and he comes in and plays. His dad, Abe Sr., you know, one of the most recorded bass players in history, comes through a lot. A lot of that has been a sustained blessing, you know, and relates to something I didn't mention, which is after Ensoniq, I continued kind of a record-only path for about 7 years, and then a point in time came where the record business was kind of slowing down, and it was trying to find itself, you know, as it rolled into the internet era. And I went back into sound design with Spectrasonics. And Spectrasonics I worked for 13 years as their VP of design. And what they do is they make virtual instruments. It's like software. Omnisphere is their flagship synth. Stylus RMX is their drum machine. Keyscape is the latest release for keyboards, and Trillion for bass. And these plugins are used the world over. And I am very, very, very grateful and very proud to have partnered with Eric Persing and the team over there. And I still collaborate with them, but I'm no longer full-time. We are full-time at Scott Frankfurt Studio now for 4 years. And even though this studio I built in '94, it was private up until 4 years ago. It was only for production and things that we were doing. But now you can get into Scott Frankfurt Studio, and we love to work with everybody that, you know, the types of people that I've mentioned, but also if someone has a guitar and they're 16 years old and they're the real deal, we love to work with everybody. You know, there's no question about it that there's a wide range of people that we love to have here. I'm always looking for anyone that's doing it for the right reasons. Christian or not, do it for the right reasons, you know, and have a true heart to make the world a better place with music. That's what music does. That's why it's so important. It's why I'm still hooked and live and breathe music, is because I feel like I'm maybe occasionally touching something that's very sublime and very important, and not because of any great skill I have, but because of, you know, how God is shaping my life and how it just kind of reflects out. Hopefully, every now and again, we do something that will get a little goosebump, you know, and you feel like you've touched that. And so that's what's you know, makes me happy to get up every day and do that. So as a recording studio owner, we get to see people that are finding their journey. You know, I've definitely walked a large portion of mine, and I'm grateful to see people just starting out, and I can see so many things that, you know, there's really anything new under the sun, and it's like everyone is looking for that same thing. Yes, some are looking for recognition, some are looking for wealth, but most artists, as insecure as we are looking to connect to the power of music. Like, the thing that makes music great is that it's coming from somewhere outside of you. When you sit down and write a song and it's inspired, that is not trivial. That is not a small thing. That's a big, big deal. And so whenever I'm producing somebody, or whenever someone else is producing for someone here, I'm just in support of that beautiful craft and that moment. That's why we open the doors, you know. Yeah.
And you said you don't know how this has happened, that you're connecting with all these, but I can say that it's your character, it is your passion, your commitment. Even when I asked, hey, could we get together for this little bitty Frontline Records Rewind show, immediate yes response, love to. And I was so blessed by that, because you had who wasn't in here yesterday?
Yeah, right, Sergio and Kareem. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, but you made time for me, and I have a feeling you do that all the time for lots of people, and that is not forgotten.
It means a lot.
And so thank you for this time together, and thank you for all that you continue to do to help those who, have this something inside them. It needs to get out. It needs to be heard. And you have a big part of that. So thanks on behalf of all the listeners of Frontline Records Rewind of taking this valuable time out in your beautiful studio. We're grateful. Everyone, if you haven't heard of Street Called Straight, this is one of the reasons I want to do this show. It's a gem, and I want you to take a listen. And you've got to hear some today, but it's available everywhere digitally, so check it out.
Thank you, Adele. It's been a complete joy.
Frontline